Hello everyone, welcome to the Prepared Mind channel. Boy, have I got a doozy here for you today. I like to address topics which are controversial, even though YouTube doesn't like controversy. I like to challenge people's thinking on ideas, even though challenging viewers typically loses subscribers. It loses viewers because people don't like to be challenged. We have a very unique situation here in the Prepared Mind Network in that we like to challenge ourselves in our thinking and ask hard questions. That is why, with regard to shit hitting the fan, prepping, which are themselves controversial in nature, I like to talk about other things which normally aren't associated. I'll talk about the economy. It's becoming more and more associated because people are realizing that failed economies and shit hits the fan go hand in hand. Furthermore, I address social issues. I address everything I can that I find fascinating personally, but has a tie-in to shit hitting the fan. So controversy we're no stranger to here, whether it's race or gender identification, which always makes me laugh because it used to be a joke. We used to be able to laugh at it and laugh about it, and even laugh with it. But now we're being told to choke it down and accept it or take it as a suppository and like it. Anyways, today's topic is controversial. It's not going to break the Richter scale, but it will make you think a little bit and wonder where we're at in this world. So, not to try and scare anyone, but just let's have a talk. Let's have a good think, Let's have a good think. RonPaulInstitute.org, right? He writes, Ron Paul, that is, and I'm not a Ron Paul sycophant, acolyte, fanboy of his. I just think he's got some good ideas and I like to address things. So he writes, the most shocking thing about the House impeachment hearings to this point is not a smoking gun witness providing irrefutable evidence of quid pro quo. It's not that President Trump may or may not have asked the Ukrainians to look into business deals between then Vice President Joe Biden's son and a Ukrainian oligarch. The most shocking thing to come out of the hearings thus far is confirmation that no matter who is elected president of the United States, the permanent government will not allow a change in our aggressive interventionist foreign policy, particularly when it comes to Russia. Now, the article, and I'm done reading it here. That's it. That's all I needed in order to generate what the hell for shit hitting the fan and prepping. Right? Go ahead and read the whole article. It goes on to talk about Vindman and then the other person who was on being questioned there with Vindman. There's a woman to his right, to our left as we faced him. I believe her name was Fiona Hill. But I have some more pertinent questions. I have some more, very pointed thoughts. And it would be to ask some questions, right? My question, what I wrote down here is, if the deep state doesn't like Trump or any president challenging the interagency foreign policy decisions of the nation, what makes any American citizen, politician, or bureaucrat at federal, state, or local level think that the federal interagency policy regarding domestic matters have any concern but their own in domestic shit hits the fan, or how and or to maintain order, restore order, or punish adversaries to their policies after any emergency or state of war? I know that's a long sentence, but the idea is to say, we've got an interagency policy, meaning we've got the bureaucracy in charge of our country with regard to foreign affairs over in the Ukraine having to do with Russia. And they came out and admitted, they absolutely admitted that, this is our interagency policy and we don't like Trump. We don't like that he's done what he's done and got into it. And the question we should have as people First and foremost is, well, we thought the president was the one who had policy. It's his policies that are enacted on. Right? Well, apparently not. Apparently the think tank doesn't take a president's policy and then go with it and say, okay, if that's what he wants, then we're going to address it by doing X, Y, and Z. They just say, we don't care what the president likes, X, Y, and Z. We don't care. Our policy is, LMNOP, and we're doing that whether the president likes it or not. And if the president confronts us on that, then we're going to try and get him thrown out of office. That is exactly what they've done. That's what they've admitted to, right? Literally, they have admitted to it. So, right, the importance of the question of whether or not government can be trusted or believed, it is answered when the federal interagency policy, which is the deep state, we've now discovered them. They're outed. They don't leave office when a president leaves. They stay there year after year, decade after decade, and they are inbred. They are nepotistic, and they just bring in people, train them, and beat them into this policy that they've had, and they can't be changed. They won't be changed. So the question of whether or not government can be trusted is answered when the deep state's mentality is brought into a domestic consideration. That is what I say. We thought this was about Ukraine, John. No, it's not. It has everything to do with the domestic question. Yeah, the fight right now is in Russia. The fight right now is in Ukraine. The fight right now is between the executive branch of the government, an elected president, and the deep state appointed, self-appointed, and self-regenerative bureaucracy. Someone might even say degenerative. This is the CIA, the FBI, the NSA. Now they're dealing with matters, they're secret. Everything that they touch becomes national security. And they believe that because of that appellation, that name they've given it, it is sacrosanct and above reproach what they do. And no president really can do anything but look at it and say, you guys are the experts. You've been here forever. You do what you think needs to be done. And I'll go to the microphone and tell everyone what needs to be done. And in all truth, that's what the Ron Paul article addresses. No president has changed, whether they're Democrat or Republican, this idea that we need to stay in eternal conflicts, especially when it comes to Russia. Right? Especially when it comes to Russia. Right? Let me read this sentence I wrote. It's no longer a question of which policy is the best or who is the most authoritative and knowledgeable. It becomes a question of the legitimacy of the bodies seeking power. Right? It's the legitimacy of the bodies seeking power. How can we have a government that is for the people, right? Does what we want for the people, that they're going to do things for us, if we have no say in what the government does? That is why we have a Congress, and that is why we have a president, and they appoint and elect or vote on Supreme Court justices, but every bureaucrat sits at the pleasure of the president. And he should be able to fire them or hire them, and he should be able to direct what they do. And Trump, he's famous. You're fired, right? That's what he's supposed to do. He doesn't like what you're doing. You do it wrong. You don't do it well enough. You don't work hard enough. You're fired. I'm all for that. That's old school, I know. There's no HR involved. There's no meetings. There's no counseling. You're done. Well, they're trying to go the other way with it. They're trying to say, oh, President Trump, you're fired. But the legitimacy of the body seeking power. What we've discovered through what is happening with the Trump administration, we've discovered that the body seeking power, that is a political officer or political uh, uh, person. They're seeking the power, but you don't get it. The person that we're discovering seeks power has held power. That's the deep state. And we're seeing it being explained to us through Ukraine. We're seeing foreign evidence of it, right? Now, I'm going to read this that I wrote. The deep state has now revealed itself, applauded itself on camera, exposed itself in the impeachment inquiry, and revealed that it is a lawless institution arrogating to itself sovereign status and confessing its treasonous crime. It has revealed itself through the coup attempt. It's applauded itself on camera. That would be the old guys talking with the woman saying, "Thank God for the deep state." And this just came out a couple weeks ago. They're like, yeah, and the crowd applauded, and the guy was happy with himself, and they're like, yeah, good thing we're here, or someone may have screwed everything up. They've applauded themselves. In other words, they've not only accepted, publicly stated that they exist, but they're congratulating themselves. They've exposed itself in an impeachment inquiry. So never mind the applauding of itself, they show up at the impeachment inquiry because they, the deep state, through its representatives, have said, here we are, we're going to tell you why you need to get rid of the president. And that's when the Vindeman character, yada, 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 and the other ones, yada, yada, yada. No, you guys aren't in charge. There's no crime here. But they're trying to make it sound like the president acting on behalf of the American people and saying, you know what, we think you ought to look into this. That's a crime. The interagency power, or deep state, the interagency policymakers on the federal level, they're the power. And guess what? Right? They were challenged by Trump, so this is the fight. The deep state has revealed that it is a lawless institution. We have laws, we have rules, we have a constitution, we have statutes, we have a code of federal regulations. We have a structure of government that has existed, and they are telling us they don't abide by it. So it has revealed itself in the impeachment inquiry and on camera as a lawless institution, that is one that's above the law and acting unto itself. And it's arrogated for itself, I say, that means being arrogant pricks, sovereign status. It's above the president. And the people elect the president, so it's saying it's above us. It doesn't have to listen to us and what we want for our country. It's claiming itself status of sovereign, king, supreme being. And through doing so, it has confessed a crime, and the crime is treasonous. They've confessed being traitors. Whether this is a 4D Trump chess move, I don't give a rat's ass, or a frog's fat ass, or a flying fuck at a rolling donut. What's important to me is that they've done this, they've admitted it, they laugh about it, they throw it in our faces over Russia. And someone might say, John, it's just Ukraine. Who gives a shit? This is where my concern for us as preppers, as America, really gets hot under the collar. I'm going to read something I'm going to reread something I wrote earlier, and please listen to the undertone that really comes out to the front. If the deep state doesn't like Trump or any president challenging the interagency foreign policy decisions, what makes any of us, any American citizen or politician or bureaucrat at the federal, the state, or local levels think that them, the deep state, the federal interagency policymakers, what makes us think that they give a shit in any domestic matter and have any concern other than that of their own if there is a domestic SHTF event? right? In other words, if we have shit hits the fan here in our country, whether it's light, medium, full on, regional, hot spots all over the place, do you think for a second that the federal interagency policymakers within the FBI or FEMA or any other agency, do you think they believe that the president has any say? That the people are what matter? This really exposes, as far as I'm concerned, their attitude towards us, what they think of us. Right? When people go, wow, I've read the executive orders, it seems like they can take over the whole country. Yes, they can. From food, water, people, we're human resources. We're not the people. We're not human beings. We're human resources. Oil's a resource. Water's a resource. Minerals are a resource, and you're a resource. Right? They will take over farming, cities, manufacturing, distribution, everything. They run and own everything. Do you think they give a shit about the Constitution? Right? And the tried and true, it's an emergency excuse or reasoning they provide as the reason they can suspend the Constitution. I would like to see them say they suspend the Declaration of Independence, because if they take the Constitution, if they shear that off the table and put a match to it and say, well, we've got a domestic emergency, that leaves us with the Declaration of Independence, which, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, it is still an organic, living, alive, breathing document that states who we are, and what we can do. And the Declaration is none too clear. It couldn't be more clear about our rights. In fact, it was through the Declaration of Independence that we found the Constitution. It is through the Declaration of Independence that we founded the Constitution and the nation. But we look back to this deep state, this federal interagency policy making machine. They have created policies that have come through executive orders, that exist in the Code of Federal Regulations, that exist in statute as policy, right? All of the FEMA maps, all of the FEMA rules, where do you think those came from? You think Jimmy Carter sat around and dreamed them up? No. A federal interagency team built this stuff. And they don't care. If the deep state on foreign matters doesn't care about the president, which means they don't care about us, and they know better because they're the experts. They've got all the experience in the world. What makes you think they won't pull the same level of thinking domestically? It has expressed itself, and I've talked about it, in continuity of government, the COG. That is, they're concerned about themselves first and foremost, and their authority first and foremost. And they will maintain control of the government at the expense of everyone and everything. But no one ever examined that any further and said, well, wait a minute, what does that make us? Right? What does that make our elected officials if in an emergency the bureaucrats take over? Right. You know, we're less valuable than dog shit that has been cooked under the summer sun for a month. Right? They won't even bother to step on us, and if they did, we just blow away. Right? They don't care. In fact, they're antagonistic towards us. They are in their job for the job's sake and for the sake of power and to win the game. They're not public servants anymore because they don't serve the public. They serve something they call national security. They serve what is known as continuity of government. They serve an ideal that they claim via Mr. I'm going to say, you know, all praise the deep state. Thank God for the deep state. That's what they serve, is themselves. Literally self-serving people who have an established set of goals, and they're all laid out, and it has nothing to do with the country. This is why you are a prepper. Because like other pieces of the government, local, state, federal, they just don't care. They'll run right over the top of you. They'll destroy you with regulations and beat you in court to death and steal everything you have if you disobey or challenge them. Well, we have a challenger in chief, Trump, who a lot of us criticize, some of us a lot more than others, and he should be criticized to keep him on track. It is the criticism of our public servants that reminds them they are servants. Trump has gone against, openly criticized the deep state. And look what is happening. He is being attacked. And an attack on our servant is an attack on us, to borrow a rather age-old concept. An attack on the sovereign is attack, right? On the sovereign servant is an attack on the sovereign itself. They used to say an attack on the king's guards or king's soldiers or the king's servants, right? Is an attack on the king itself. Well, we are the king. We are the sovereigns. We are the people. And our servant, our attack dog that we turn loose on the world to do our bidding as the people, is the president. Like him or not, agree with him or not, he is the servant, and we criticize him. And if you attack him or his authority, it is an attack on us, the people. And this isn't an academic exercise, is where I'll run right back to. This is about shit hitting the fan. Are you prepared with food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, and a means of self-defense? Because when shit does hit the fan, these people won't give a shit. The federal interagency policy makers and machinations under their bureaucratic alphabet soup letters have plans for you and me. They're re-education camps. They're concentration camps. China has them. It's just come out. Yeah. I'll try and put links in there. China has them. Right? The European Union has them. All countries have them. And the United States has them. We have concentration camps. We have internment camps. We have re-education camps. And depending, right, on the flavor of the month and how strong everything is, you may end up in it. Because you think for yourself. Because you believe you're one of the people with a capital P. If you are politically unpopular, if you are critical, then you are a threat to them. In other words, the only way to get off their list is to kiss their ass and pay their bills and pronounce them sovereign. Them is the federal interagency groups, also popularly known as the deep state, the shadow government, or bureaucratic dickheads. And I've got to tell you, I've run into lots of bureaucratic dickheads on a local level and butted heads with them because I could hold them accountable, because I could make them and stand and talk across a desk and point to the other side of the desk and say, you're on the servant's side. You can't do it with these guys. You can't do it with these guys. You just can't. Right? I can't go talk to Vindman. I can't go talk to the CIA. Right? The importance of the question of whether or not government can be trusted or believed is answered when the deep state mentality is brought into domestic consideration. Right? If we can't trust them internationally with foreign matters, what makes you think we can trust the deep state domestically? They have, for generations, conducted medical experiments on the people, social experiments on the people. They have arrested people who have violated no laws. They have manufactured evidence and locked people up. They have stolen property. Basically, every crime mentioned of King George in the Declaration of Independence has been committed on the people of the United States by its own government. And they've been polishing and practicing and saying it's national security and it has everything to do with Russia or the other enemies of the United States government. They don't even say the people of the United States or the United States of America. They only talk about the corporate United States in Washington, D.C. Right? That's who they're worried about, themselves, because that's who they represent, is themselves through that institution, not the people. Right? And if they've honed and refined their attitude, who they are, and set themselves on high with international matters, what attitude do you think they have when they look down upon us? Do you think they regard us, the American people, as any more important or special or authoritative with regard to their lofty status? My answer is no, because I've seen the rules and regulations and what they have planned for us. I've seen it. When the excuse comes, they're going to protect themselves. They're going to disregard us. That is why we're preppers. A war in Ukraine, a war in Syria, a war in Afghanistan. Go to work, pay my taxes, eat my food, drink my coffee. No problem. Sorry about that to you other countries. That is a foreign policy decision made by some really smart people, and it's out of our control as the American people. Actually, it shouldn't be. But we've been able to say that. As they militarize the police, as they shred the Constitution, court decision by court decision, and as the police power of the United States governments, federal, state, and local, look inwards to control us, we're going to find out as a whole people who runs the show. Be prepared now, because this deep state mentality will be turned on us at some point, and it will come to life. It will become the monster that we've always feared. Only we feared it coming from an occupation by China or Russia, or the King of England coming back and taking our country and subjugating us to their power. Surprise! Our own government has subjugated us to its power. It has changed its attitude, it has created its rules, and it has built an army, and has for decades asked its officers, its military officers, if ordered, will you confiscate weapons from the United States citizens? It's asked that for decades and decades and decades and pushed it. And now we have politicians, public servants that we can get to, that we can at least have a dialogue with to some degree, have come out and said, we're taking your AR-15s and your AK-47s. We'll nuke you. We have the nukes. Right? Alec Fartwell, California Democrat. Peter Pan Schiff. Right? Nancy Smelly Pants Pelosi. Chuck Schumer. All of these douchebags want to take your guns because that is the last thing they need to do in order to properly have their interagency policy in a position where it cannot be challenged. And they will turn it on us, whether we have guns or not. It is coming. It is coming, folks, so get prepared. Chance favors the prepared mind, wouldn't you say? What if you just learned everything I talked about today? If it just happened, I'm very sorry, and I would seek counseling. If you're partially awake, and this is more, there's always more to learn. And if you know everything I've talked about, and I just reminded you of it, it's a dire situation we all face. Because it's economic, it's legal, it's military, it's political, it's social, it's everything. And we see that everything embodied, the dispersonal, impersonal, interagency mentality of these fucksticks. They could sign a piece of paper, they could rubber stamp the death of people in a city. We see that Dallas doesn't seem to want to behave. Why don't we drop a tactical nuke on it? That'll spread the word in a week. We won't have any more problems in the southern states. Poof. That's what they could do as an interagency policy enforcer. Well, where's the president? Wait a minute, you can just kill people? How did that happen? Yeah, welcome to the nightmare of the future. And they already have the rules and infrastructure set up. And now they've revealed they have the mentality. When I say Semper Fi, and then I've started saying also, always faithful, it's because of this. Who are you faithful to? It's a question of loyalty. I took an oath to defend the country and the Constitution, right, and obey the lawful orders of the president when I was a jarhead, right? It doesn't say that oath lasts forever. There's no time limit on it, but it doesn't say I have to. As soon as the oath works, right? The oath works, though, if you are honest and loyal and faithful. It works because you know what you're honest and loyal and faithful to. These people are loyal to themselves. They're faithful to their belief system, which is they are the authority figures. Right? So when I say Semper Fi to you, right? Your faith, your family, yourself, your country, and what you believe in is what you should remain faithful to. Because when the balloon goes up, when the shit hits the fan, right, that's when the faith gets tested. And those who operate or are employed under that oath, guess what? We're going to find out if they're loyal, if they're always faithful, or whether they're going to do something for a paycheck, and what that something is. And more so than a paycheck, how about their loyalty and faithfulness to humanity? Right? The idea that you have to answer to a higher authority, and that there is a higher authority than just government officials and government rules and papers that can burn in a fire. Right? That is what has always held man in check, or at least it's supposed to. Right? And that's an understanding that there is a higher authority that will punish if you fuck things up and you do it on purpose. Woo! Pretty deep, huh? I'll talk to you guys again. Chance favors the prepared mind. Is yours. Semper Fi, everybody. Always faithful. And God bless America.